Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for our last session of the day. We have two sessions with multiple speakers. So the second session will be new capabilities in reporting and analysis views, presented by Blanca and Mirko. But first, get your hands together for the first session. Bring your Copilot extension to Microsoft Cloud, presented by Yevgeny and Peter.
And the feeling goes on and on and on, and the feeling goes on and on and on. Come away tonight, only you.
Yeah, so welcome to this session, as we just heard.
Yeah, we have a lot of topics for you today. We would like to show like an inspirational video. What can you, as the IC or partner, build with Copilot Toolkit, like for real users, for the real products. We're going to cover a lot how we can support you on your journey, giving you capacity and models, which will power a lot of magic you can build these days. And then we're going to talk about models, testings, why Microsoft loves MCP and why it's important. And we'll hope to address all the known questions by end of 45 minutes.
Yeah, and as Yevgeny said, the context of this is the developer tools for Copilot and Business Central. How many of you have actually tried out using the tool? So not a lot. How many have actually built something they released to a customer in production? Sam, you don't count there on the front. So a few as well. Okay, so it is a toolkit that is there to help you build your own interactive Copilot features. We call them interactive. Classic Copilot features in Business Central, as opposed to the autonomous agents that you probably heard as well about. Everything will probably be rolled into a common toolkit, but our focus right here is mainly on these interactive Copilot features. But the toolkit really allows you to build features very easily, focusing mainly on your value add and not all the plumbing for calling LLMs and setting up connections, focusing on UI, etc. But you can use the toolkit for that. And the toolkit, as I said, as I show here, comes with UI pieces. It comes with some system module functionality with common functions. We'll talk a little bit about the test tool that it has. You can use telemetry for insights into use. It comes with now Business Central AI resources that we're going to talk about, as well as guides and samples. And you can go to the AKA/BC Start Coding with AI Learn if you want to read more about the toolkit.
We can spend hours to show you what we built in Microsoft in our core product, but people prefer to see what the real people doing, like you are, in the field. And we ask our former MVP, Christoph, to share his experience. So we're going to show you what he built, his company Dynaway, for their customers, and how they use Copilot Toolkit for their solution. So we have a 5-minute video, which is long. I'm going to play you some pieces and walk you through what's going on. Let's see how it goes. So in Business Central, they have the IC solution, and there is always a step to make it set up. You always have this step to set up the solution, where the user needs to go through multiple steps, some configuration. And he or she can do it manually, of course. But in this case, they decided to bring Copilot to maybe help out with that. So here's a step where you need to set up some asset statuses, and I'll pause it for a second. And you can type it manually. You can use some import from Excel, blah, or you can describe exactly what you need for your industry, for your case, and take it from there. So they added like a small Copilot button to basically simplify that setup step. And what's happening here, you say, I want to create that category for my customer use case. Maybe it's a consultant on the phone, maybe it's an end customer. Just a couple of clicks away, you have your initial data set up, and then you move on to the next step. And their solution has multiple steps. So on the next steps, guess what? Kind of same situation. You want to set up more data, and again, you create very specific prompts, and you have your test data generations continue from there. And again, you can always discard, select, reiterate, get what you need. Believe me or not, this solution has at least 5 or 6 steps where before having to do it manually. Now you can kind of add a Copilot action for every step away. So I'll just scroll a bit through that to come to the most interested step maybe at some point. Yeah, somewhere here. So at this point of time, you went through setup for a solution and you create a lot of data. And then they have like a little bit more advanced step. Now you want to create some templates or like a document templates, again, to get your solution going. And you can bring your templates from somewhere, or you can use, again, Copilot functionality with a little bit more advanced prompt or very advanced prompt with a gallery of prompts you can bring to help your users with those initial steps. And in this case, you create this form template card, but it's like a document template for whatever that solution needs to do. And you continue with that. It's kind of interesting. We're all waiting some magic to happen and it feels long, but I'll just show you how within 5 minutes video, you can set up your solution with a customer on the phone without spending before like 45 to 50 minutes, if not more. So actually it's quite fast. Even sometimes you feel like you're waiting for this magic to happen and this animation to finishing. So that's really the scenario. Very grateful for Krzysztof to show how he can build that. He always has this conversation with partners. It's your choice. You can go for it, you can leave it empty, but one of the kind of generation of test data for your ISV solution setups looks like a very straightforward case where you can bring things like that in your solutions.
Yeah, and as we said before, all of this is built with the tool kit itself, right? So in this release, as you probably heard in the keynote yesterday, we are moving something we call the Business Central AI resources from a private preview, which was by invitation, to a public preview, which makes it available to all of you who want to build Copilot features. And we'll talk more about that, and it includes also a billing mechanism, so that you don't have to care about billing, but can rely on Microsoft actually billing the customers directly for their use in production environments. And so basically it gives you a choice between that you can use your own Azure OpenAI subscription for your features, or you can rely on the BC AI resources. Most likely you will use both, because the BC AI resources is really for production use. Typically, hopefully, you're going to try the actual calls out while developing, while testing, etc. And there you need to bring your own subscription as part of that. But we'll talk more about that. So what is Business Central AI Resources? It's a key feature of the developer tool for Copilot in Business Central, because it really makes life a lot easier for you as a partner when you build and deliver Copilot features for customers. AppSource Publish can then now use LLMs via the Microsoft managed Azure OpenAI resources. It eliminates the need for publishers to independently procure and manage an Azure OpenAI subscription towards their customers and handle sort of the billing for each of the customers. As I said, you can still bring your own subscription. The Business Central AI resources is seen as the default recommended approach. It might not fit all of the needs in all of scenarios. That's why you can bring your own still for production environments. And as I said, most likely you will use your own for development and testing. So just to show how it used to work, we in Microsoft would typically build our functionalities, the features we have, the Copilot features we have. It will call through the toolkit as well and use the BCI resources, but you would, up until now, have brought your own subscription for everything, including production. But going forward, you can actually choose for your apps to also rely on BCI resources for production. As I mentioned, still use your own for test and development. So some of the benefits of using the Business Central AI resources, first of all, you don't need to handle all of the infrastructure requirements on having many customers on board and making sure that you manage deployments, update deployments, etc. for customers. We'll take care of that. It also means that you very quickly can onboard to using or to integrate AI features in your IP. It means that we handle everything related to scaling, for example, to throttling, load balancing, etc., as hopefully your feature will take off and have users actually use that. It also has the benefit for customers because they can get a single bill basically across ISV solutions. That makes life a lot easier. And then it also makes sure that it's compliant, or it helps out with additional compliance in security and privacy, etc. We will take care of that. And especially on the content safety, we will have blocking policies enabled. We will also include some sort of systematic prompt for harms, hate, violence, sexual and self-harm filters. We'll also have jailbreak detection and cover for cross-prompt injection attacks and more of these kind of sort of safety mechanism and safeguards. Also, from a privacy perspective, we just want to mention that your prompts are your IP. It's not something that is shared or being used for sort of training of AI or Copilot or anything like that. We sometimes get that question. So let's look a little bit about how you can use the Azure or the BC AI resources in your own solution. We actually have some samples. So on aka.ms/bctech, you can go to the Azure OpenAI sample. How many are aware of the BC Tech samples on the GitHub? So I actually have quite a lot of different samples there for many different types of solutions, one of them being building Copilot features. But in that sample for making Copilot features, we actually show you how you can connect to BC AI resources. So there's two different scenarios. There's a scenario where you want to use the ones that we manage, the BC AI resources. You use something called set managed resource authorization on the Azure OpenAI. And you have to put in basically which model that you would like to use. And also you need to provide your partner Azure OpenAI subscription. And that might seem a little bit strange when we're using our subscription for that. But that is only because we want to have a proof of access to Azure OpenAI. That's parts around knowing sort of the having accepted the ULAS of using Azure OpenAI, etc. So we only use what you provide there to make sure that you are aware of those ULAS. We don't bill you or anything like that. We bill the customer directly, and then we give you your model. If you want to run with your own subscription, of course, you just use the set authorization and provide your own account on that. Now, sometimes, as I said, you will probably use your own for testing and development and the BC AI resources for production. And so how do you do that? Well, we actually have a context object that you can use and use in AL code. So you can test whether you're running in production in SaaS. And if you are not, you use your own. And if you are running, or if it's the customer's production, it will use the BC AI resources, right? So it's the same app, same source base. It's just contextual to the environment. Now let's talk about the billing of AI resources. So if you are using your own subscription, you'll likely run into some challenges with managing billing across customers. So you can imagine maybe a customer having 3 different ISV solutions installed. Each of those ISVs have their own billing mechanism because they have their own Azure OpenAI subscriptions. And that means that the customers will have 3 different bills, for example. And that can be confusing. Also, if as an ISV, hopefully you have more than one customer, maybe you have many customers, but maybe you only have a single Azure OpenAI subscription for your features. And that means that you need to distribute out the consumption to each of the customers in a way. And you need to handle that, right? And that is a bit tedious as well. And hopefully you scale even more, which means that you might need to manage a lot of traffic. So you need to manage the Azure load balancer and traffic manager and regional instances, etc. And by using the BC AI resources, you get rid of all of that complexity. Let's look a little bit of how then billing actually works and what it costs. So we use a shared currency across all of the Microsoft services. It's something which is called Microsoft Copilot Studio Messages, or MCS Messages. And you will see that used across our product, other products in the Microsoft portfolio when it comes to billing. And the billing is measured by some shared meters. These shared meters for BC AI resources will be the tokens used. So that will be the sum of the input and output tokens. How many are aware of what a token is? Around half. So
Good.
super quick. Basically, when you ask the LLM, you pass along some user instructions and some Copilot instructions. It's text. And then a token amount is computed based on that. It's not the equivalent of a character. It's somewhere between characters and words. There's actually tools available that can sort of tokenize that, so you can get an idea of how much tokens you're using. Actually, in our test tools, when you run those, we will also show the amount of tokens used. But that's the way you can get an insight into the tokens. And then it also depends on which model you're using, right? A more powerful model is more expensive than a less powerful model. And then that billing is consumed from a quota. So the customer will have a free base quota from their license of BC. Then they can either have a prepaid quota that typically has some discount because they're buying upfront quota, or they can go with a pay-as-you-go quota billing, basically. They pay from what they're using. So let's see how that works. It's a little bit convoluted, to be honest, but let's go over it, right? So billing, as I said, is done in messages. And for AI tools that BC AI resources follow, the messages are computed from something that is called responses. So you'll see I put a link in here from the documentation. It shows how responses are mapped to messages, right? So if we take the middle column, middle row there, we see that if you use the standard sort of SKU, then 10 responses is the equivalent of 15 messages, or 1 response is the equivalent of 1.5 message, right? So far, so good. Then we look somewhere else. And then we can see when we're talking about these AI tools, which is what, again, we're following, you will see that 1 response is per 1,000 tokens, right? And it doesn't matter which of the models right now that you're using, that's the mapping. And then you can go some third place, and you can see the pricing per message. And as I said, it depends a little bit on whether it's pay-per-go or whether you do the message packs, because you get a little bit discount. But if you just take the pay-as-you-go, it's about 1 cent, 1 US cent per message. So if we do a quick calculation, right, it means that if I'm using a GP3 model, for example, that means the standard SKU, then 10,000 tokens equivalents 10 responses, equivalents 15 messages. It's the same as 15 US cents. So another example is if your feature in a call to the LLM is using 4,500 tokens, it's actually 5 responses or 5,000 tokens because we round up, and that becomes 7.5 messages or 7.5 cents. So that's a way to compute what the cost of using your feature, what is the customer going to be billed. You can see this afterwards, right? There's going to be slides and recordings. Also in the UI, the customer will be able to see in the Copilot and agent capabilities page where they can enable the Copilot features, our features from Microsoft, as well as your features. And we're going to add a new column, which right now is called billing type. And there the customer can see who is in charge of the billing, right? Maybe the feature is not billed. It could be part of the license, the base license. It could also be billed by us, Microsoft. That's when you use the BC AI resources. If it's billed by you as a publisher, it will say, I think, custom billing or something like that. I just also want to mention that this is only billing for the AI consumption or the large language model calls. If you're a publisher and you're selling your apps, you still can charge independently on the customer's right to use your apps, just like today on AppSource. Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about, you show example of something you can build as Christoph built. You heard about monetization, as it will give you a lot of models so you can build your solutions. But the question is, which models? So imagine for a second we all will meet in this room back in February. I'll probably would told you that as a Microsoft, we are looking on the latest models from DeepSeek and also from the latest reasoning models which just came from OpenAI. And back in February, Sam Altman had a vision how all the models will evolve kind of upcoming months. If we would met together in April, I would told you that that vision materialized and they have a new model like GPT 4.5, and we're all looking at Microsoft how can benefit from those new capabilities with this model. But as the meeting of today, what's interesting that some models disappears, some models get added, so they're changing all the time. But the great news, there's a new GPT 4.1 models, which is built specifically for developers. In fact, we call them like a new API. And this is something we want to kind of make a bet, or this is something we're going to use to build our features and your features on our BCIA resources going forward. One of the benefits staying with us is that we kind of give you this staying current with whatever happening in, if you will, LLM world. And we're just saying that over the summer, we will move all our integration to the latest and greatest models from OpenAI. Now, in our toolkit, we give you those abstractions, which will look something like that. So it's very easy for you to say, I want to just be on the latest, and here you go. I've really abstracted a bit from you. Now, one of the questions you can ask, like, why would you move to the latest models? Like, what's the point moving from maybe Apple to bananas? And I just asked a Copilot to summarize for us as a developer community, what is the benefit of those models, latest ones specifically? And you can see a lot of improvements of things which you should care, or we should care, following instructions more precisely, latest capabilities of function calling, MCP definition support, and response APIs. So a lot of innovations come into those models. Specifically, if you define your instruction, it will better follow the format. You'll have a better way to select if you need to prioritize on rank some definition or prompts. It'll do a better job to classify problems. You can describe more specifically what not to mention to kind of deal with the situation that I will never say I don't know, I'll pretend and talk about something else. There's a lot of great stuff in those models which help you as the developers to build real features. Every time we talk about new models and migrate to the new models, we always say, like, how hard can it be? And we always want to remind you that new models bring new features and improvements. Latest version doesn't mean it's better. It usually means differently. And they can perform differently compared to previous versions. And they're not backward compatible. And here we usually take a step back and tell you a story, which we experienced with Microsoft last summer. It's a great story. It takes a couple of minutes. So I want to share with you that. So the story was that we as a team have been here before. We're constantly moving from previous models to newer models to benefit from all the improvements. And we had a prompt like that. I realize not many of you maybe do a lot of prompting right now, but you can take a look at this example, and you have a prompt, kind of very structured prompt following all the guidelines, basically saying, hey, you have a small assistant, which will help to draft emails, to respond, to confirm booking appointments, be clear about work you need to do, place, be professional, be respectful, things like that. So that type of prompt could result in an email like that. Dear Peter, we'll come to you to do the work on a given time. That work will take in that place, or this type of job. If you have some questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy to assist. And then you have like Evgeny Korovin. And you probably have some link. So you as a user can click this link and go to your booking system and see the right order. Okay? So from instructions like that, it'll probably it work like that. And you can always have a link to confirm or verify what has happening, like very straightforward. And then overnight, that features start working slightly differently. So it starts saying like, hey, thank you so much for your appointment. We'll come to you and ready to help. and you still have a link you can click to go ahead and confirm your appointment. So one more time. From prompt like that, from initial experience like that, suddenly to experience like this. Now, if I would ask you, the audience, to rate, if this is like 5 stars, and this is like, how do you think that behavior just changed and regressed from 0 to 5? 2. 2. Not good. We feel something going wrong. So obviously, it's pretty straightforward. It's the lack of details. It's just fall down significantly. We call it accuracy. But the good news was, or interesting news, that actually the feature still worked. You still create kind of confirmation of the bookings. You still have a link. It's grounded. You can verify. And maybe it'll be great SMS for sure. But it's obviously not as good as it's been. And the reason of that, because it went from a model change, because models have versions, and we kind of increase the version. So it went from one model to another, and there was some, let's call it, significant change in accuracy behaviors. But of course, Microsoft writes tests time to time. We're doing a good job. And we could detect and code that regression. We went back, adjust our prompts slightly, and get feature back on time with no major drama. And the main takeaway, and I really love to put this picture. We have Sam, one of our senior principal engineers in the team. And if you ask him, Sam, what is a good prompt? He will tell you, good prompt is great structured, and it's concise, and it looks beautiful. But what matters is that you really have a good test coverage, which allow you to make this prompt still work as you evolve your integration of Copilot features. So, OK, I told you the story that migration can be hard, can be challenging, and you need to have a good test coverage. And now I'm telling you that we are going to move to the latest model over the summer. So there's a couple of good news on this path. So here's an example of real PR we did in the team last week. And so basically, one of our engineers had a task to make sure we can migrate some kind of small component from an old model to previous models. And if you look at his PR, and by the way, you see we have some AI summaries of a change. It's saying, hey, we moved a feature from version A to the latest GPT 4.4 mini. There is some changes from version, and not that much else. So why? Obviously, we have a lot of tests also passing. So what we're experiencing so far, that maybe this migration is much less painful compared to previous ones. You still want to pay attention and run your test if you have them. But we don't foresee significant, maybe, regression this time as we're going for this migration from a previous model to the latest model, which is a good news. How many of you use ChatGPT in your phone pocket? Did you notice like a model selection on top? You can select different models when you ask your questions. Did any pay attention to that? Do you really care? One of the questions happening in the industry these days is that if you look at what Azure does, and actually Amazon does the same, there is the idea that maybe for some integration, you can abstract from large language models. You can say, like, why do you talk about a model? Can I just write my prompt? It just magically work. And there is some infrastructure coming across AWS and Azure, which allow you to do things like that. It allows you to say, given your scenario, we can find the best model for you to do your work, and you kind of abstracting from that. And that works great for maybe chat experiences, some categorization. But for BC, we truly believe it still holds, that you need to be really model aware, do your good prompts, do a good job, making sure your feature really works, because prompts are very specific, everything very specific, and we want you to stay on this path. If you build Copilot features, your feature design sometimes could look like something like that. You have some user input, you run some logic, magical LLM, you always validate your response to do with hallucinations, and then you do work if you're fine with it. And we could suggest you might use more powerful models to do your real core processing, and maybe use cheaper or faster models to validate some of those responses. That can be how you can use those models in practice in your solutions, as Krzysztof built before. Finally, I guess our main call to action is that new models are coming. We roll out them across BCI resources, available in all regions for all your customers with good capacity, with good throughput. And that's how it is.
Thank you, Evgeny. So let's talk about, since we talked about tests, you probably heard that a couple of times now. It's super, super important. It's really a must when you develop Copilot features. We heard that in the keynote yesterday as well. Whether it's for testing the feature itself, accuracy, and for harmful handling, or whether it's to detect regressions when you modify the prompt or when the models change, you really need the tests or test coverage. And that's why we have a Copilot test toolkit or test tool, which we actually launched a couple of months ago. So how many have heard about the test tool so far? Yeah, so not a lot. So it's an AL extension that you can use in sandbox environments. And as I said, it's shipped and now available on AppSource. I put in a QR link to the AppSource location. You can also actually see the source on the BC Apps repo on GitHub in the AI Test Toolkit subfolder. So what can you use the test tool for? Well, you can use it to efficiently test your Copilot features end to end. It has the ability to create a test suite where you can run test cases with actually data-driven input, so that you can create files, data sets for all of your different tests, and then iterate over each of the basically rows in the data set to call each of the test cases in the suite. So that allows you to run a whole suite in one go and see the results from that. And as I mentioned before, you can also, as part of that, evaluate things like token consumption. You can then evaluate the results in different ways. You can, of course, always do human evaluation. Sometimes that's required. But you can also use evaluation functions or methods from within your test cases. Or you can rely on Azure AI Foundry. How many are aware of Azure AI Foundry? So Azure AI Foundry is a tool from Microsoft, a platform, that you can use to develop AI features. Not just for BC, obviously. It has some features that are relevant in connection with BC. It has a playground where you can actually play around with prompts and try them out. That's a super good place to start. Don't start with building something in BC. Start with understanding whether you can express your intent or your feature with good enough instructions in the playground. And then you can also use Foundry for things around evaluating for harmful content, safety, and whether the responses are in alignment with the questions, basically. You can also use Azure AI Foundry for generating test cases. Typically, you want many test cases, 500, 600, 700 test cases, to cover different kinds of ways of asking your Copilot features, different user biases, etc. The tool itself, as I said, I'm just going to show it here. We're going to get back to this a little bit more in a moment. But it's basically, you can define, as I mentioned, the suite with the data set. You can have a data set for all of the test cases, or you can have data sets per test case. You can then include the actual test that you want to run. When it has then run, you can see the stats for the suite run. Yeah. Let's skip this part, I think. And then quickly go, it shows how you test the code, but I think we're going to skip that and then go to this, which covers the same. So we have, as I mentioned, guides and samples online. And we have now a video, half an hour. So if there's anything you should take from this session, it's probably this one, because this one is a guided tour of building a Copilot feature. So it will go through how you use the toolkit, how you are going to use BC AI resources and Connect, how you're going to write test cases, etc. And we have a video if you like videos, and we have a written document if you prefer going through instructions. And it's actually based on workshops that we had at Directions that we put in public now.
We did a small poll before the session, and we're changing topics again. And we ask you a question like, would you be interested as ISV to be able to bring your skills, whatever it means, to our AI features in the core product? And some of the questions is, yes, I would like to extend your features. No, I disable all Copilot faster than telemetry. It's my favorite choice. And then, of course, maybe, depends how hard it is, meaning, do I really need to learn something specific, or I can do with the skills I know? So we would like to talk quickly about the story, and that's why we bring this beautiful picture of Microsoft, HART, and MCP. And if you don't know what MCP means, this is like a great picture to illustrate that. Yeah, sell me a pen. It has MCP, and you kind of hook up with that. But actually, it really solves MCP. If you want to take something take away from here, MCP solves a real problem. It really standardized in a very standard way how LLM features can understand which tools are available or skills are available and can consume them almost in real time. So I want to show you the demo, and we'll have a conversation later what has happened after the demo. So I'm going to switch to my PC. No?
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm in a Business Central, and I'm just opening a chat. And chat is a great tool. It has some predefined skills or capabilities. So in a chat, you can say, show me latest quotes from Alpine. Well, we'll figure out that quotes mean sales quotes. We'll figure out Alpine probably mean a customer. We'll try to kind of help you with that request, if you will, in a couple of seconds, of course. So let's see how it works. Yeah, we found some quote from Alpine. And we can take you there. And maybe in the core product, you have another features like another Copilot, which can help you to maybe suggest more sales lines. And this feature has also capabilities or skills. You can bring lines. For example, we can copy from a previous invoices. And you can press go, and we'll do all the magic for you. But the point is that the first experience and second experience is a little bit like hard-coded or concrete. It has some skills, and it can only do that and not that much. So let's say, for an experiment, you would like to ask chat, do you know anything about all the beers on a BC Tech Days recently? So you're asking a question, and imagine you have a skill which can help with that. But obviously, there is no way right now to chat to know that, because what is a BC Tech Days? What is a beer? It's something else. So imagine you would like to be able, as ISV, to extend those features to bring your own skills, for example, to answer a question like that. So I'm going to skip to another machine. It has some very fancy pane on the side. You don't pay attention to that. And in this build, I have some configuration to some MCP server. So in short, I'm saying there is something else exists which has some skills which are defined, which I might consume. And then if I go to chat and say, do we have BC Tech Days beers? Suddenly chat can aware that there is another skill exists. It can talk to it, work with it, get some information, put it to my conversational context, and hopefully help me to reply with it. Yeah, question in this case. So yes, here are the beers which look announced yesterday, and obviously we try them out. And to prove that it's all real, which it obviously is, on the right side we have some a more engineering pane. But what I want to show is that when the chat was running, it figured out that there is a new skill, and that skill can help us with a user intent. So I asked, can you help me about the information or that work I need to do? And suddenly we found some skill. We can call it. We can bring information to Business Central, and it just works. And it's all from a lab. I want to start with that. But it's some of the ideas how we could extend these experiences or similar Copilot experiences in Business Central. Now, how did it all work? If I go back to presentation, somewhere behind the scene, we configure small MCP server, which basically do work, which describe, I can help with that type of questions, call me, we call it, it provides all the feedback back. In this list, it's just kind of hard-coded list of beers, but it can be any kind of integration or information from here. And then somewhere in AL, we can say, hey, we have this new definition of the skill, which coming from my IC solution or somewhere else, and now it's part of our platform. We know about the skills, we can call it, and it just works. So I guess if someone asks you why Microsoft is so excited about MCP, there's many answers to that question. And we're considering if you also need to use that technology to extend our features, like chat or another Copilot experiences. If you in ISV can do a better job to suggest sales lines, come to us. If you want to ISV, want to bring your skills to the chat, come to us. Let's have a conversation how we can enable you on this path. We have 5 minutes left. Maybe we can talk quickly about what's next and then walk some of the typical questions.
Yeah. So am I talking to that one? Yeah, so I guess some of the feedback we got from the partners that have used the Copilot test tool is that they would like to see more support for flexibility in the UI. Right now it's just sort of one dialogue format, something bigger, something inline. So that's something we are thinking of. Also, many scenarios involve images, putting in an image and having it analyzed. It could be simple assessments about what is in the image. Typically, the models that we have are multimodal, so GPT-4, 4.1, they will actually be able to handle images to some degree, but it could even also sometimes be pure vision models, which is more about finding features and deep analyze of images. And then we have asked for the reasoning models, also the O kind of models. And then in general, it can be a challenge to troubleshoot. Just in general, building Copilot features is very much trial and error. You have to modify prompts, you have to try out. Again, that's where the tests come in. But being able to have better telemetry, feedback loops, and understand customer prompts. And then we often hear from partners that they would really like to have better search capabilities, right? So that customer is asking about a certain thing, but they're not using the words that are what we have in the objects or in the data, right? Maybe they call it a product and we have an item or something like that. And so these kind of lookups or search where you find by similarity, so semantic search we call it, that's a big ask also. We are actually building first semantic searching platform for metadata, but also later for data, so that you can actually come in and search in all of the customers' data for something similar to what it is that they're asking about. That's an important thing when building Copilot features.
Yeah, frequently asked questions. Usually I have a question, okay, how do I know if I take a bet on you as your cloud provider? You have resources, models. How do I know that something is changing, like version? And we're saying, we'll give you some telemetry signals for sure and find a way to communicate if you're changing models so we don't break your extensions or obviously in production. Another question we're getting all the time, can I get access to latest models outside of what you guys have? If I go to Azure Foundry, I have a list. And on the BCI resources, this list is shorter. Again, give us feedback. Maybe we can enable more models for your scenarios over the time. That's for you, Peter.
Yes. So, as Evgeny mentioned before, sometimes there can be changes or prompt changes can change the behavior, right? And actually, we have some additional system prompts that we apply when you're running through the toolkit. And again, that can have an impact. So always you should use testing, right? And that could also lead to some subtle differences between when you're using your own subscription, where it's not, and then using our subscription as part of BCI resources where we do apply this. So make sure you test for both of those scenarios when you test the features towards customer use. Let's take a few questions, I think. Yeah. Do I dare to throw it?
Hello, testing. I have a bit of I'm a bit confused about the billing, the monetization. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So depending on how we build the whole AI extension, for instance, depending on the prompts we provide, I guess, it will like depend on how accurate we get the answers. That's how much the client, I guess, will have to pay if the prompt fails and he has to do it over and over to get the actual, well, accurate answer. So my point is that we'll have to make the extension supremely accurate to actually, you know, not impact the client's wallet.
Yeah, so typically, so that is by and large true, right? That the amount of data involved in the LLM call, the model used in the LLM call, and of course also whether the feature will give the right result in the first try, or you have to do it 5 times, can impact the billing, right? But first of all, when you saw my calculations, actually quite cheap. That's one thing, and it is very likely that if you build a good feature, which I hopefully you will, the cost of that is a lot less, even if they have to ask, 3 times than if they didn't have the AI support in the productivity, right? So I would argue that in all realistic cases, it's not a big issue, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't focus on getting a good accuracy still, right? And so the experience we have is that it's, you will not get 100% accuracy. We have sometimes discussions with partners, what is good enough, right? It's really up to the partners knowing the scenarios about what is a good enough scenario. But that's part of the testing. If you feel that it performs well, you monitor the customer's uses. You should monitor if they're asking a lot of times, that's probably something wrong. But I don't think it's a real life issue as such.
I guess it's
Strive to, I don't know what we should set up a bar. It's hard to say what a bar is, but 85 or 90% or 95% coverage or accuracy should be a good target, right? It's a help. You saw in the video in the beginning of all those different suggestions for the different asset categorizations, etc. Typically, it's a co-pilot, right? It's the user is in control, so they can modify parts that they don't feel is good enough without having to call the LLM again. That would be the typical scenario.
I see. I think.
Yeah, we're out. Yeah.
I think we need to stop now for next session. Thank you for your time.
But we are here afterwards, and you can ask
Sure.
us a question. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.